What's up, everyone? Welcome to Big Fight Preview. We are talking Teofimo Lopez, Jamaine Ortiz. You see I'm alone here in studio today, but I am joined by my illustrious crew. We have Teddy Atlas, George Jakovic, and Paulie Malignaggi. George, let's get right into it.
Chris, you're lonely, but we're always with you in spirit, and we're talking about a big fight, February 8th, and that is a Thursday, not a Saturday. Thursday, February 8th, one of the best fighters in the world puts his belt up on the line, 140 pounds, Teofimo Lopez against Jamaine, the technician, Ortiz at the Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas. That is Super Bowl weekend, and this is a perfect fight for Super Bowl weekend. It is going to be exciting. Teddy Atlas, Teofimo Lopez has proven he's probably the top 140-pounder in the world. Jamaine Ortiz really opened a lot of people's eyes with his fight against Vasily Lomachenko a few years ago. Really performed well in that fight, showed he wasn't shy of the spotlight. What are your thoughts on this fight, February 8th?
Now we're gonna see some touchdowns. All right, you touched on the Super Bowl. We're gonna see scoring. All right, we're gonna see the ball moving upfield, going across the goal line, because that's what you always have a good chance to see when you watch Teofimo. He's electric. He's got, he has that kind of talent. Not everyone does. He has the kind of explosive neon talents that usually make people watch, because you never know when it's going to be that moment, when all of a sudden he can score a 30-second knockout, which he's done, or somewhere in that vicinity in early rounds, because he's that explosive. Obviously with power in both hands, but also with those quick twitch sort of fibers where he can close a gap, bang, right on you and catch you with a shot, like he did when he won his first title against Colby. And almost a little bit, it's too early in the game for him to even compare him to this man, but a little bit like Pacquiao, when Pacquiao would be so, you never knew when he was going to suddenly catch the guy and just possibly end it. And it was all because of his power in his hands, his quick hands, his explosiveness, but also his feet, that he was, again, explosive with his hands, but explosive with the ability to close the feet, close distance with his feet. And he's fighting a solid guy. That's all you can ask for. He's fighting. So you get a chance to find out, will those abilities that I just pointed out, will they show up against a guy who's really solid technically? You got to be solid technically if your fighting name is the technician. You better be. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, that sounds funny. That don't make sense. He, as you said very well, he opened people's eyes against Lomachenko. He had a tremendous performance there. He shows that he belongs at this level. Now we're going to find out, can the technician also be a bomb specialist? Be a guy that can disarm a bomb. The bomb squad. Can he be that? Because that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to make sure that the green wire is removed, not the red wire, so nothing explodes on him. So we're going to find out how good a bomb disposable guy and how good a technician is. It should be interesting. It's got everything to draw fans to it. A solid guy who is his technique able to beat pure talent. And that's always, for me, that's always very interesting.
Well, it's going down February 8th. And before the fight, we got to talk to both fighters. Coming up is Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is a talker. We got a two-part interview dropping February 5th and February 6th. Here's what Teo had to say about the fight on February 8th.
Welcome, fight fans, to this special edition of Spotlight Interview. Oh, it is going to be fantastic because we have one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world joining us. Teofimo Lopez is here on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. George DeMatteis alongside Paulie Malignaggi and George Jakovic. And George, it is an honor to have one of the best fighters on the planet to talk about his career, his life, and his upcoming fight against Jamaine Ortiz.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys and everyone at ProBox TV Really, really grateful to be back here and really talk more stuff about boxing and the sport that we love the most, So, going to it, yeah, I'm not retired, man. I think I just did that just for the downtime. I needed some time off just to spend quality time with my son.
Tell us about Ortiz. I know you have a history with him. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, Jermaine Ortiz, the technician, they say, and this guy, he faced Vasily Lomachenko, a former opponent that I faced and champion. So Jermaine Ortiz, we go back like 9 years. We faced each other in the 2015 National Golden Glove finale. And, it was a great scrap up. Everyone knows the National Golden Gloves is a very, very tough competition to win, let alone even get there and compete. So, I know I'm facing somebody that's definitely got the skill sets to give me a run for my money. Now, when it came to it, though, Jermaine Ortiz, I know Bruce Trampler and Brad Goodman, who are like the Hall of Famers and the best matchmakers in the game, they really was throwing that out there and was giving me these names: Jose Ramirez, Jermaine Ortiz, and I think who was the other one? It wasn't really something that sparked my interest, So with the Sandor Martin fight, the Kambosos fight, those two things were, I would say, needed in my stance of understanding mental strength. That was really it. Kambosos, I don't overlook any of my opponents because I've been there where I've overlooked them in amateurs. I remember going 12-0 in the amateurs and think that I'm gonna get this one like a sweet cake, and nope, you lose and see everybody turn their back and walk away. So going back and forth with all these things, I honestly got to a point where, I needed this to make me better mentally, much more physically as well. And, when it came to Ortiz, I didn't want that fight. I was trying every other fight from the Haney's, Kambosos, Ramirez. We even went down to Jose Ramirez, and he said he wasn't ready for February 8th. A lot of these fighters, they blow up in weight. After I beat Josh Taylor, I took 6 weeks out. And what did I do right after? I always stay on the low, man. I keep everything on the DL. And what did I do? I actually started training. Just started training. So I've been training since August all the way to January now. So I've been ready. It's all about making these fights happen. And it was very hard to make these fights happen. Nobody wants to face me. I guess after the performance that I did with Josh Taylor. So now it's all about executing with this fight. Everyone thinks I'm going to overlook this guy, Jermaine Ortiz, or I already am. And that's beautiful. You never know what you're gonna get from me, and that's the like, how can I say, that eye candy, sweet money making machine that you need in the sport. So, because everybody's gonna watch February 8th. Wait till y'all see what I do to Ortiz. Look, my sparring partners. I haven't been hitting them hard, and I'm dropping them body shots, head shots. I mean, I've only gotten better. I needed that fight. I needed those. I needed to feel that flow again, and I got it, man. I got it, and I got it more when I started being with my son, because he got so much light in him, and he just gave it to his dad. Ooh, everybody is on some ish, and what I love is that I don't want to fight ever again. So how do I do it? We put an example on Ortiz. And that's how you do it.
Make sure you check out that 2-part interview, February 5th and 6th, because T was a great talker. And Chris and Paulie, I want to get your reactions, but Chris, something that he said really jumped out at me. He said, you never know what you're going to get. When I think of that, I think of Kambosos and I think of the Sandor Martin fight. If he fights like that against Jermaine Ortiz, he might not have a belt at the end of the night.
Yeah, no, Jermaine Ortiz is a very dangerous guy. I've actually been studying these guys a little bit, getting ready for this fight and getting excited about the fight. It's a great fight. And actually, they do a lot of similar things. They're both very explosive. They're both very athletic. I think that Lopez is a little sharper, a little more explosive. He's definitely got more power. But if he disregards or overlooks Ortiz even at all, that can make up that difference in the power, make up the difference in that little bit of explosiveness, because there's a lot of similarities. And Lopez, I do think and lean towards, but if he's overlooking Jermaine, and Jermaine takes this the way that he takes these big opportunities, we could have a real fight in our hands, and Lopez could end up having another less than stellar performance, and he cannot risk that against a guy like Ortiz.
Yeah, there's certain opponents that I noticed, like only guys like Lomachenko or Lopez will fight. I remember Richard Comey was one of them as well. I remember thinking when Richard Comey fought Teofimo, like that was a real ballsy move on the part of Teofimo to take him on like that at that time. And when he knocked him out the way he did it, I was super impressed, because Colby remained a guy that was dangerous, had always been dangerous, maybe had not always been taken care of by the business side of boxing. I remember he had to go to Russia to fight Shafikov and got a kind of a raw deal there. But he was always a lurking guy who was dangerous and a kind of a heavy puncher. Nobody really wanted to go near him unless they had to. But Lopez went right to him even and won his world title at that time. And then I remember Lomachenko ended up beating him later. And the same thing with Jermaine Ortiz. Once you see Jermaine Ortiz in the Lomachenko fight, you're like, not too many guys are going to go near this guy. Because, again, he's not a guy who's taken care of by the business, but he's a guy who can fight and should be taken care of by the business. But he's a guy who people are going to avoid if they can. And lo and behold, look who goes after him. Teofimo Lopez. Not even shocked anymore at this point. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be – and these are the kind of guys that, unfortunately, they're probably – maybe they don't beat either guy. I mean, listen, Jermaine Ortiz could come very, very sharp and still lose his fight, or he could win because you never know what kind of side Teofimo comes in. But he's good enough to beat even a good Teofimo. So Teofimo has to be really sharp because Jermaine is the kind of fighter who can actually beat you even if you're at your best. He's that good. I feel like he can raise his level of game like that as well. But if he doesn't win, he's going to be one of those guys nobody goes near. Again, you know what I mean? And that's the shame of the business. You got to enforce these kind of matchups because if you're not going to fight each other, then the Jermaine Ortizes of the world have to get their shots, And I like that. I like this fight. I like the fact that it's happening. I like the fact that Lopez didn't shy away from it when he couldn't get the other opponents in the ring with him. And I think it's going to be a solid style matchup. And I think we're underrating Ortiz in another way too. We talk about we're going to get the Sandor Martin performance or the Kambosos performance from Lopez. Listen, bro. One thing about Sandor Martin, he had proven himself already. He had beaten Mike Garcia as well. So Sandor Martin was not just Sandor Martin is another guy who just because he comes in and doesn't get the promotional push of the mainstream narrative in boxing doesn't mean he can't fight because he had already shown he could. And Kambosos, you know what? Let's give Kambosos some credit too because I'm getting some blowback from George, and I don't want to be a George critic all the time, but he had beaten Mickey Bay, and then he who was an ex-world champion himself, and then he came in and beat Teofimo as well. So I think that. These also aren't guys that they just showed up and Teofimo's underperforming. I think it goes to show you the depth of the weight classes that he's fighting in and the choices he's making in fighting them. Although Kambosos, I believe, was a mandatory.
Well, speaking of Jermaine Ortiz, we also talked to Jermaine about this fight on February 8th, and here's what he had to say about fighting Teofimo Lopez.
And today we will be talking to one of the best fighters on the planet, one of the young prospects coming up as well. Worcester, Massachusetts finest, Jermaine Ortiz, who will be taking on Teofimo Lopez February 8th for the WBO Junior Welterweight title. Jermaine, first of all, thank you very much for joining us here on ProBox TV. And first thoughts, the first question to you is, what do you think about this fight? What is your initial thoughts about what you're going to do in this matchup against Teofimo Lopez?
I prefer Teofimo because right now he's the one with 2 titles, the WBO and the Ring magazine. And like I said, he's probably the best at 140 right now. So what not other better opponent than to take the one who's the best one at 140. I'm excited for this fight, and I think it's going to be fireworks. I think it's going to be like upset of the year. Him thinking he's going to knock me out, let him think that, but I got the same thing coming for him. So I think this fight doesn't even go to decision. I think it ends up by knockout. I think it's going to be a surprise. Yeah, same way I'm coming up in weight class, and I've been seeing a lot of differences in my sparring partners as well, and them taking knees. So it's going to be a great fight.
Jermaine, a lot of times, I look at you, you're kind of an underrated guy. You low-key, you've got some good wins, some good performances in your career, and it just hasn't picked up the momentum in terms of fanfare that some of these other guys have. But in looking at your record and looking at your fights, you're world-class. But the circumstances under which the Lomachenko fight came, where it was just looked at as a stay busy fight for Lomachenko, but obviously you made it much more difficult than that. And now with Teofimo, it's sort of being looked at again like a stay busy fight because all Teofimo Lopez and people questioning about Teofimo Lopez's career are talking about are the bigger names like the Haneys or the Subriel Matiases of the world. I mean, I don't want to say do you feel disrespected because I feel like that's without question to a degree, right? But do you feel like people underrate you a little bit? I mean, because I feel like if I didn't go out of my way to look at your career and look at your performances, I wouldn't know how good you are, And so why do you think that is, man? Why don't people realize how good and how how dangerous of a fighter you can be. Because even Teo mentioned to us something that I didn't know. You guys fought in the 2015 National Golden Glove Finals. So you guys have shared a ring together.
Yeah, I do think people underrate me. Like you said, it's people and fight fans who don't go to look into my career and know what I'm capable of doing. And I think all that would be done and over with after I win February 8th. It's not gonna be a question no more of being an underrated fighter.
Was this something that you needed to do because of your body growing, or was this just an opportunity based on what was presented?
I was in the transition and going up to 140, waiting if there was a world title fight for me at 135, but the world title fight came at me for 140. So it was all about timing, and the timing was right.
Teofimo Lopez, if you follow him, and I know you're in training, but he's been talking about fighting Crawford. He's been talking about fighting everyone else except you, the guy that he's facing on February 8th. So the amateur experience, does it come into play? And does it matter to you or not that this guy he sounds like he's not focused on you?
The amateur fight, we've both grown. We've gotten a lot more experience. Our body's grown. I think it's different, Stylistically, sometimes it can be very similar still from the amateurs, but in the sense of the ring IQ and other things that we bring into the game, into the ring of power and speed is going to be different. But what he says about fighting other fighters, it doesn't matter to me because I'm focused on him. I'm not focused on what he's doing, what he's saying, I'm focused on February 8th in my job. After the Olympic trials and the Olympic years, when whoever went to the Olympics, I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna see these guys again. Everybody who I fought in the Olympic trials and the people who went to the Olympics, that's who I said I was gonna see again. But I'm always willing to fight everybody. I want to prove that I'm the best, and the easiest way to do that is to beat the best and fight the best, and whoever's in front of me, just beat them. And it doesn't matter if it's tough or not. It's just how my journey goes, and it's for better storytelling.
Jermaine, if you win, they got a parade waiting for you on your way back home?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When I win. I think, man, it's a great week. It's going to be one that I'm going to remember forever. The biggest event in the United States, and being able to fight for my first world title Thursday night, Sunday's football. It's going to be a great week, and I'm excited. And thank you, ProBox TV, for having this interview with me.
Yeah, we can't wait for that fight, Teddy. Jermaine Ortiz, the thing I'd like you to comment on, the first time he was on that big stage was against Vasily Lomachenko, and he didn't shy away from it. He performed. Although he lost the fight, I thought Lomachenko really pulled away in the championship rounds. But you never, Ted, you're a great trainer of a lot of great fighters. You never know how a fighter's going to perform under those bright lights until it happens. And Ortiz did, although he lost that fight. So thoughts on Ortiz?
No, listen, the two world champions said it the same thing I did, and they said it maybe even better, more directly, that, you can't sleep on this guy. This guy is a guy that it's not just a matter of, if you have a poor performance. Sometimes that's kind of what we kind of edge these sort of matchups with. But when we give our, when we handicap them and we give our analysis, we'll say, well, if he's off. But Jermaine's a guy who is solid enough, again, the technician, but he's solid enough to be in there with a prime Teofimo. I think what comes into play now is it's on Teofimo, because I'm glad you brought up that question. It's, for me, the way I look at what you just brought up, that's interesting is we were talking, you're putting forward the question is that Ortiz showed that he could handle the spotlight. You could depend on him, that his effort could be consistent with what it had been with past opponents when he was on a big stage, that we weren't sure. For me, we're sure of that. I think we might be a little less sure about Teofimo, and I'm taking nothing away. He's the best guy out there, and I already gave him great accolades. The kind of talent that is a rare talent. Not everyone has that kind of neon talent that he has. Explosive ability, everything that goes with it. But he can be hot and cold. He is the guy who, I've said it a million times, I'll say it 1,000,001. The two world champions know this. This business is 75% mental. No matter how good you are technically, how many of those upsets have had Buster Douglas maybe with Tyson going back? How many of those upsets you could put into the wheelhouse of the mental more than the physical? That the guy wasn't mentally ready. Teofimo, there's been a few times that you could question whether or not he was mentally ready, whether or not he took the guy serious enough, whether or not there was personal things swirling around in his universe, whatever it was, that you expected a little bit more of a consistent effort, not just the spots where he could explode on you, but the consistency. Sometimes we've seen that missing a little bit in those couple of times that he's had a problem in fights, where he's had a tough fight, whether it was with Martin or whether it was the loss to Kambosos. So to me, the question is, what Teofimo are we getting? That I know what we're getting with Ortiz, a solid guy, not as explosive or as talented, especially in the punching ability department as Lopez, but a guy who you're going to have to beat him. And is Teofimo 100% ready mentally? That's what makes it a little bit more interesting for me.
I know what we're getting next, Teddy. Even though Paulie and Chris aren't in the same room, they're about to share the same ring. They're going to give us keys to victory for Teofimo Lopez against Jamaine Ortiz on February 8th.
Keys to victory for Jamaine Ortiz versus Teofimo Lopez. Now, both guys are actually very, very athletic and explosive. Jamaine Ortiz, though, I believe has the better endurance, and he throws great combination punching. So for him, he needs to be careful not to throw his single jab, because he has, in past fights, been countered over the top when he gets lazy on that jab. So number one, he's got to not get lazy on that lead jab with a very explosive and good, precise counterpuncher like Teofimo Lopez. Number two, he's got to counter and control the jab of Teofimo Lopez. Both guys make a lot of the same mistakes, and Teofimo Lopez at times has a jab that can be countered, because he'll throw that shot and leave that head out there to be countered. And lastly, throw combinations. I mentioned the endurance of Jamaine Ortiz. He's got a fantastic endurance. He trains very hard. He's got a deep gas tank. There are times in the past for Teofimo Lopez related to certain conditions like his asthma, he hasn't been as active as his opponents. Think the George Kambosos fight. So there's going to be opportunities for Jamaine Ortiz to push the endurance of Teofimo Lopez, and the way to do that, throw combinations. So, number one, Jamaine Ortiz needs to be careful not to just throw a single jab and be there for the counters of Teofimo Lopez, because he's very explosive. Kambosos used a great double, triple jab, and sometimes hook off the jab instead of the single jab. So from there, so he should throw that single jab and then back it up 2, 3 times. Or he can jab and then hook off it, because Teofimo has a tendency that he'll start to dip to that side off a guy's jab to look for the counter. So he'll be there to get hit with that hook over the top off the jab. Kambosos did that really, really well. Number two, counter the lead jab of Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez, very, very explosive, likes to set the jab, likes to set the tone out front, but a lot of times he'll throw that shot, overthrow himself a little bit, be there for that right hand over the top. So he's got to kind of use that distance to come over the top of that right hand and counter that shot as it comes over. And then lastly, combinations. Jamaine Ortiz is a great combination puncher. He's got a great gas tank. Teofimo at times can be outworked because he's looking for such precise shots, because he's such a sharpshooter. So Jamaine Ortiz, a lot of times, he'll throw combinations to work his way inside and then come with hard shots. He's got a very good body attack. So I think that's going to be a really good weapon for him. Use those punches from the outside, double, triple, boom. And then once he gets in there, rip the body, especially on both sides. Try and sap that gas tank a little bit out of Teofimo Lopez.
Keys to victory for Teofimo Lopez against Jamaine Ortiz. Number one, Lopez is explosive and athletic from the outside. Vary the shots, keep Jamaine Ortiz off balance in terms of not being able to time you and figure out how you're going to lead. Number two, punching between Ortiz. Ortiz, a lot of times, is a guy who likes to get excited and throw those punches in combination. He'll leave some room in between those shots. You can punch in between him, especially that he comes forward a lot of times with his head a little bit leaning forward in his excitement to get those combinations off. And number three, Ortiz has shown susceptibility to the body, get to the body, a balanced body attack as well. So from the outside here, a lot of times Ortiz will try to lead with jabs in general. Lopez, first of all, can offset that with his own jab. Okay, but in between all that, he's also got to get off first with his various shots. He can also counter to the body with the left hook. He can come over the top of the jab with the right hand, but he can also lead himself. A lot of times Lopez is so sneaky with his athleticism, he'll lead with his hooks, or he'll lead with the overhand rights, or he'll lead with body shots. And he gets away with all this because he's so athletic. If he can balance it out the right way, you can take away the anticipation of the defense of Ortiz. Because let's face it, a lot of defense is anticipation, your ability to anticipate. In between that as well, Ortiz, when he does get off, he throws those shots in combination, but he leaves a little bit. Sometimes he leaves a little bit with his head. He can leave shots. He can leave his head a little bit open. You can punch in between them as he's throwing those combinations. Lopez is very, very good at hand-eye coordination. You can punch in between there, either touch a shot to the body, touch an uppercut, a little hook, whatever. Those are momentum changes because Ortiz is not going to see them coming if Lopez is able to punch in between them. And with Lopez's power, that can cause some hurtful damage. Lastly, go to the body. We talked about sometimes he can counter the body, also lead to the body with various shots, various shot selection. One of the ones Lopez likes to use a lot is to sell this jab up top and shoot that straight right hand right down here, right to the stomach. It's worked very well. He's even scored some knockdowns in his career with it. But he's also athletic enough where he can be looking right at you, give you all this, and then shoot a hard shot to the body, or shoot a right hand to the body, or whatever. You know, it comes as part of that varying the attack and getting off in a balanced way, a varying attack. That part of that varied attack is going to the body. Ortiz has shown some susceptibility with body shots at times. I think Antonio Moran hurt him to the body in one of the rounds. You can notice that with Lopez, with his ability to get off those shots and be sneaky, he may be able to land some good body shots.
All right. There's your keys to victory by the champs, Teddy Atlas. Now we're going to predictions. Who do you have in this fight on February 8th?
I'm going to go with the champion. I'm going to say I already know the kind of talent. I've already put that forward. We've all put that forward, the kind of talent. He's put it forward out there that everybody knows how talented he is. I'm going to say that in that interview, he looked comfortable. He looked happy. That might sound funny about saying about a fighter. You want to see the old George Foreman, but George looked happy. He was actually better when he was happy in his second career. It's George Foreman, if you guys don't remember. Yeah, he really was. So he looked happy. He looked content. He looked good in his skin, if you will, comfortable in his skin. If he's that way, then he'll mentally be ready, I'm going to assume. And if he's mentally ready, all the talent will be there for Teofimo. So I'm gonna say that the easiest one would be say that he's going to win a decision. I'm going to say he's going to stop Ortiz, have a chance to stop him late, where Ortiz will slow down a little bit, especially if Teofimo goes to the body, which is the smartest way to go if you're fighting a technically solid guy. Go downstairs, and he showed that he started to slip a little bit late against Lomachenko. Lomachenko is an older guy than Teofimo. If he slips a little bit late against Teofimo, he can step on the gas pedal a little bit, maybe get him out of there late. I'm taking Teofimo late round stoppage, very late, maybe 11th, 12th round.
Okay. I'm going to go with Teofimo on points. I feel like this is going to be the kind of fight that is going to be competitive. Both guys are going to show up ready. And I think because Ortiz is underrated by boxing, I think Teofimo is going to get criticized for the competitiveness of this fight. I think both guys are going to be actually come in very ready, and it's going to be a good fight, and both guys are going to show some good moments in the fight. I think that Teofimo pulls it out late in a decision, probably closes a little stronger. I do think that the Ortiz experience against Lomachenko may help him in terms of how he closes out the later rounds, maybe a little better. But I think Lopez's superior experience, especially at championship level, may edge it for him. I also think that Lopez will. After this kind of performance, even though it's against a very dangerous guy, may get criticized by his peers because, again, people underestimate Ortiz. And I think just like when Shakur Stevenson got criticized against De Los Santos, they'll criticize him, but nobody will go near or talk about the opponent at all, and they never want to see him again. And that's the problem with boxing. And not enough of these blowhard media guys call that out as well. Just like De Los Santos, Shakur got criticized against De Los Santos, but nobody's calling out De Los Santos. Nobody's talking about I want to see him again. Nobody talking about want to take a shot at him, right? And he can punch and he can fight. I think Ortiz is kind of in the same situation, unfortunately. He's going to lose a competitive fight. And I think it's going to fall more so on Teofimo as opposed to it falling on the fact that Ortiz is also a good fighter. Teofimo Lopez on points.
Chris?
Yeah, I got Lopez by decision. I think it's going to be a high-level contest, high boxing IQ. I think early on it's going to be real nip tuck. Again, like I was saying in the keys to victory, these guys do a lot of things similar. They're both very, very athletic, both explosive. But I lean towards Teofimo in the power department. He's a little more explosive, he's a little more defensively sound. But I think Jermaine has enough experience carrying over from the Lomachenko fight. I think he's big enough. I think he's physical enough, and he's got a great gas tank that he's actually going to see the final bell. But there are going to be some dicey moments for him, I think, in that fight, especially later on as Teofimo's class starts to edge a little bit further. But I think it's going to be a really, really excellent fight, and one of those kind of fights that you watch like, man, I want to watch that again. I want to study the little nuanced things that these guys are doing because they are those type of fighters. And I don't know. I hope I can disagree with you, Paulie, and say that I think people are going to want to see Jermaine Ortiz after this. Nobody's going to want to fight him, but I hope there's enough demand that he boxes well and shows out on that night that people want him back, and there could be a demand for him, and hopefully he can get some of those big fights. Problem is that guys tend to pick and choose easier fights more than hard fights, and there's not a lot of upside with fighting a guy like Jermaine Ortiz, especially if he looks as good as we both are thinking he will against Lopez.
Well,
our betting partner, sportsbetting.ag. Go ahead, Paulie.
Demand is created by fanfare, and you gotta rely on the intelligence of the fan base. Hopefully,
and guys like us to push these guys that maybe they can get it pushed into big fights.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, that will remains to be seen afterwards if it's going to be more so a criticism of Lopez or a credit to Ortiz. I think this is going to be one of those wins where guys have them sometimes in their careers. One of those wins where you get the win and then later on people just don't appreciate it as much as it should be in the moment. They don't realize how dangerous it was. I think of a fight sometimes that, and it's a fight only boxing fans are going to remember. Nate Campbell against Kid Diamond, Ramkulov.
Yeah.
Ramkulov was super dangerous at the time. He was the hot shot up and coming, and Nate Campbell absolutely destroyed him. And we never really heard from Ramkulov again. So a decade later, a little bit after later, people don't realize how good of a win it is on Nate Campbell's record because you're not, unless you were in the moment, you don't really see what Ramkulov did afterwards. I think this is one of those fights as well where if Ortiz is not able to get opportunities after this fight because he's so dangerous, this win is not going to get the credit it deserves from Lopez if he's in fact able to pull it off.
Well, all you guys are going with Lopez, and you see he's the favorite. Sportsbetting.ag, where you can lay some bets. Lopez is a pretty significant favorite. Will Ortiz pull off the upset? We'll see. Remember, that's Thursday. Mark your calendars. Thursday, February 8th, ESPN Plus. It is Super Bowl weekend, and we got one of the best fighters in the world fighting that night. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. We are close to 100,000 subscribers, and you get a gift. Who knows? Maybe it could be something from Paulie's office, from Chris's office, from Teddy's office. We don't know. But make sure you subscribe. ProBox TV. It's your boxing channel.